It's a real pleasure to welcome Marian back today and to talk about something that's like a huge passion for her, and it's important. Marian Wildgruber grew up in Seattle in a family of 9. She earned her BA in English and master's in public administration from the University of Washington. She loves camping, hiking, and skiing, and grew up doing that. And career in the U.S. Forest Service. After 12 years in California, Oregon, and Washington, D.C., she met her husband and moved to Munich, where he worked at the Max Planck Institute. Not everybody knows how to pronounce that, right? Max Planck Institute, where she raised 2 young sons. They moved to Oak Ridge 16 years ago, and she's kept busy with parenting, volunteer work, foster parenting, and hosting Rotary exchange students. She was born with 2 eye diseases, losing the sight in one eye at 14 and being legally blind since birth in the other. She credits her parents and 5 older brothers for her independent, problem-solving attitude toward life. So it's really exciting to have you. We look forward to hearing what you're going to tell us today. Marian. Okay, I'm right here. You bet. And maybe it's easiest just to hold that, or if you want to pin it on you, or whichever you can work at. There's a little microphone.
Oh. Can y'all hear? Oh.
And you can take your mask.
I was looking forward to that. Thank you. And hopefully you can all hear me. They love to have me at the nursing home for bingo because I use my outside voice. It feels like a reunion to come back here. And I was only part of this club for 2 years, and a lot of that was during COVID. So I appreciate the warm welcome and cherish the relationships I built here in such a short time. This is when I wish I had taken Toastmasters Club. How many of y'all did Toastmasters? I can't put my hand up, but I'm going to begin by introducing 2 of my working group members. If it weren't for this whole group of people, we wouldn't have the information I want to share with you today. Kevin Wright has joined us just recently in November, and Bill Moore has been in it since the beginning, 2.5 years ago, with Tom Burns, Darlene Thurman, and I joined about 2 years ago. And Louise McGowan and Lynna Nicholas, who've been longtime Oak Ridge residents, so you might know them, have come on board in the last few months. So I'm going to describe the slides to Kevin because I didn't share them with him yet. Hopefully the slides up, and hopefully that you can see them, and they're not too the print's not too small. That was something I was wondering about. The title is Disability and Mobility in Oak Ridge. That is a big topic that I'm not going to try and cover in 10 minutes. What I really want to talk about is this effort we have had in the last 6 months to create a disability advisory board in Oak Ridge. So let me tell you how we got started. I got started 8 years ago when this church moved from its location where the new Kroger is to here. And I was excited because I live in Briarcliff, and I realized that there's a sidewalk all the way to this church. So I thought, great, I can come during the week and participate in activities when I didn't have a ride from my husband and everything. So I decided to get my second guide dog. I had taken a long break when my kids were young, and when we moved here, there weren't many places to walk to. And these dogs are worth about $60,000, that's 60, when they come out the door with a blind person. That's the volunteer and donated money that goes into creating these dogs. So I take it as a huge responsibility. I didn't have to pay a dime. So I was at guide dog school, and I was going over Street View with one of the counselors, and they looked at the new church location, and they said, well, you can't go there. And I said, what do you mean? Well, the sidewalk went all the way up to Laboratory Road and the Turnpike. I could walk from Briarcliff 1.5 miles, but I could not cross Laboratory Road over to Summit Medical and get to the church. There's a gorgeous sidewalk out here in front of the church, you might have noticed, because municipal plans require that when new building is constructed, but Summit Medical is old enough, they did not have to put a sidewalk in. So I call it the sidewalk to nowhere because both sides of it just end up in grass. The city, I started working with Public Works Department, met with the city manager, met with the church board that I had been a part of, and tried to get a crosswalk and sidewalk put in. That was a real learning experience, and it took a long time, still not done because the city has gotten grants that have been slowed down for various reasons to put in sidewalks and crosswalks along Oak Ridge Turnpike in Illinois Valley. So the next slide shows what I've just been talking about. And Kevin, that's me and Farah at the intersection, sadly looking across the street at Summit Medical that we can't get to because there's no crosswalk. That brought me into this group with Bill Moore and Tom Burns and Darlene Thurman. The next slide shows Strong and United. That is a community organizing group that began in Oak Ridge a few years ago. And they decided as a project to work on to build success on a small scale in improving our community was to work on mobility in Oak Ridge. Darlene Thurman had multiple disabilities, including a single amputee and used a motorized wheelchair. And you might have seen her motoring around Oak Ridge, trying to go to city council meetings and speak on behalf of improving mobility in Oak Ridge. Unfortunately, she passed of COVID in December of 2020, so we keep on working in her memory. The Mobility Justice Working Group is the name of the group within Strong and United. Strong and United has not met during COVID, but still our umbrella group, and we work underneath that organization. The next slide, I thought when I looked up the Rotary Club on the website that it was interesting. Our vision statements are similar. I love the Rotary Vision statement. It's simple and easy to remember. It includes changing ourselves as well as the community. But you do that by bringing in diverse leaders in the community from different viewpoints and perspectives to try and create positive change in Oak Ridge. And that's what Strong and United's goal was, to bring in a nonpartisan, diverse group of church leaders, community leaders, interested people to improve the situation for all Oak Ridgers. So the next slide will show how we spent the last 2 years researching this problem of mobility in Oak Ridge. Whew, transportation, that is a weedy garden if you ever have wandered into it. I will not tell you about all the things we learned about transportation, the funding, the policies, the agencies that are all a part of that. Use your imagination. But we spent 2 years going through contracts, plans, documents related to transportation in Oak Ridge, specifically the paratransit, Oak Ridge Transit, and ETHRA contracts that we have, and then also sidewalks and crosswalks, which are part of the infrastructure of transportation and mobility. We met with people from agencies that are regional, state, local, departments within the city staff members. We met with church leaders and organizations that serve people with disabilities, individuals with disabilities, but this was limited by COVID. It's hard to really reach out and find those individual disabilities in Oak Ridge. A lot of them are really busy just trying to survive on Social Security or entry-level jobs. COVID kept a lot of them indoors, and there's not a central spot in Oak Ridge or organization or agency that allowed us to really interact with a lot of individuals with disabilities. But we tried, and we met with church leaders. We also looked into alternative models for providing transportation into modifications for the current transportation system. And we came up with 4 recommendations that we felt were within reach. So the next slide is our recommendations. The first is to create a disability advisory board in Oak Ridge. Last summer, when I was trying to get information about the Oak Ridge Transit contract in Oak Ridge, it took me 2 months and being sent through 4 different departments to finally find the department that was responsible for public transportation in Oak Ridge. And I have a master's in public administration, so I don't know how people who aren't comfortable or familiar navigating public agencies would ever find out how to talk to somebody. The person that was there and the people that are all there in community development department now have gotten there since the last contract was created 8 years ago. It's a 10-year contract that's renewed in 2023. And so, we were kind of learning together about what this would involve in the process for creating this new contract and trying to make improvements on it. That led me to this idea that we need a disability advisory board in Oak Ridge. We have a senior advisory board, a youth advisory board. We need a place where people can go to find this information, to get involved, to coordinate efforts in the community, as well as be a resource for city council and city staff. Okay, the next slide, that was recommendations. And so a disability advisory board, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't finish the recommendations for Kevin especially. So the first one is develop a disability advisory board, which could then work on the next 3 recommendations. One is to create a committee that would work with the community development department as they create the new contract for Oak Ridge Transit to try and incorporate some of these modifications or models that we have explored and discuss ways to improve the service to the people that use it in Oak Ridge. And Oak Ridge, as you know, is not a pedestrian-friendly city. So Oak Ridge Transit is a great resource for people with disabilities, people without cars, people without driver's licenses, people without the money for a car or to get around. They need to, it's basically our bus system because it's open to all Oak Ridgers within the city limits of Oak Ridge. A lot of people don't know that. The ETHRA bus is regional. It covers 16 counties, and that is available to people with disabilities, low income, I believe, but you have to qualify for that. But within Oak Ridge, anybody can ride Oak Ridge Transit because Oak Ridge has this contract that allows enhanced services for people in Oak Ridge that ETHRA provides. I won't go into those details because I'm sure I'm running over in time. The next slide shows that what we feel about a disability advisory board is that it's really a two-way street. It is working with city council and city staff, and I've had city council members express great enthusiasm for the idea because they have these boards and these advisory boards and commissions.
It's such a mover.
Because city council members can't know everything about everything, and they take a lot of input from these advisory boards in making policy and funding decisions. So there would be that purpose, and assisting city staff when there are questions of accessibility or disability issues, anything like that, trying to get in the front end on the planning so that we don't spend more money afterwards fixing things. That is helpful to city staff and I think saves the city money in the long run. The other direction is, as I pointed out, a focus for the community that's interested in helping, serving, is disabled. 1/4 of Americans have a disability. Not all are visible. Some are intellectual disabilities, mental health, other disabilities that we don't see but require extra services in order for people to be independent and have a high quality of living. So helping people in the community, we met with about 25 different leaders in the community, church leaders, organization leaders. That diagram's up now, right? Okay, thanks. So on the right side is just a sample of the people that we met with and are very enthusiastic about the idea of having a disability advisory board to help them coordinate their services and bring their needs to the city in a coordinated fashion. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Is that pictures? Okay, so this is an example of planning that could have helped diffuse problems if it had been done in the beginning of city projects and programs. On the left, I believe, is the Electronic Express store, not shouting out them because it's just an example. I will say that Lena Nicholas on the right side has asked them to move their grills off the sidewalk, and that hasn't been done yet. But as I said, it's just an example. There, many examples of problems with accessibility in Oak Ridge, and we're working to fix those. But that is one that highlights the Main Street project that when I heard about it was supposed to be a very pedestrian-friendly, open shopping square kind of plan that I was very excited about, and has turned into even a nightmare for people in cars, I believe, to drive around and get to the different stores and entrances. And if you're in a wheelchair or walking, forget it. So, that hopefully could have been improved. Lena has pointed out that the garbage cans, among many other issues that Oak Ridgers have had with it, are also very, very difficult for someone in a wheelchair to lift the lid and put garbage up over in it. Now, the city will come up to take the garbage out like they used to if you have a disability. You can fill out a form for that and don't have to take it down to the curb. But lifting the lid of a giant garbage can and lifting garbage up in it, you can see how difficult that is. Now, there might have been the ability to examine accessible alternatives, a lower garbage can that could still be put on that truck and lifted up and emptied, maybe half size or whatever. These are the kind of things that I would like to see a disability advisory board assist in the front end, not coming in after and pointing fingers and saying, fix this, fix that, but being able to participate in the front end and avoid these kinds of problems that have to be fixed afterwards. Okay, the next slide is, again, the Disability Advisory Board. Currently, we have gotten feedback from city council members and the city manager, and some are concerned about the number of advisory boards and commissions that currently exist in Oak Ridge. There are 16. I would like to argue that if an advisory board is needed, which I believe it is, the number should not be the deciding factor on whether or not it is created. The city does support the advisory boards with city clerk, but again, that is not the main deciding factor, I think, in whether we should have this for people with disabilities in Oak Ridge. Alternatives that have been offered are to have small task forces within the city, to use the existing boards and commissions. But I believe, and we believe, that a disability advisory board is coordinated. It's a resource for the community, and it brings together people with different disabilities, different expertise and knowledge to try and recognize and solve problems from the front end. So a disability advisory board would advise city council and staff and support when reports or research is needed, would participate, as I said, in planning of projects and programs, would work with city council on developing a strategic plan for spending the $100,000 a year that has been promised to meet the $3 million of urgent ADA compliance needs as addressed in the self-evaluation transition plan passed last summer by City Council. 30 million is the total, 3 million is urgent, and Oak Ridge is dedicated $100,000 a year towards meeting those goals. Fixing those things that already exist. That doesn't include things like non-existing sidewalks. The next item was to, I think, explore options and was also coordinating with agencies and organizations. As I said, transportation is one area where there are 100 different organizations that participate in different ways with improving transportation for people with disabilities, transportation in general. And then you've got the funding resources, which is, a whole nother ballgame, federal and state and local. So working with those different agencies and being aware of what's out there, grants and everything like that. But the main thing at the end of the list is to be a resource for our community. The people with disabilities in our community, their families, their caregivers, the organizations that serve them, all deserve to have a place where they can collaborate, commiserate, but to come for information, because right now it's scattered all over Oak Ridge. There are people doing wonderful things, but it's very scattered and the information is not being shared as well as efforts. So I see the Disability Advisory Board as being a great location for that. And finally, my last slide shows one of my favorite events in Oak Ridge, the Lavender Festival. And I just wanted to end by saying that my husband and I moved our young family to Oak Ridge 16 years ago because we saw Oak Ridge as very progressive, very dedicated to excellence and to investing in the lives of people in the community. And I would like to see us add individuals with disabilities, their families, caregivers, and organizations, and give them a voice and a part in doing that.
Any questions, please ask them. Marian, if you repeat the question, because we're making a video of this.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, any questions? Go ahead, Jim, and then Pat.
Marian, thank you very much for your presentation. Jim Michael here, and on behalf of the Community Action Grant Program that you're familiar with, the Rotary Vision, does money in any way help your advocacy group helping achieve your goal?
Well, that was one thing I liked about the recommendations that we came up with. A lot of them are not involving investing a lot of money. Of course, there's always accessibility improvements that can be made. And there are organizations in the community working to provide these services that can be made aware. And that is, as I'm saying, a central location that is aware of grant opportunities, funding opportunities to help people in the community find those would be a valuable resource. I'm sorry, I didn't repeat the question. It was Jim Michaels from the Community Action Grant Program, thank you, and asking if grants and money would help in this advocacy effort. Thank you, Jim. Oh, thank you.
Not a question, but a comment. I just wanted to remind us, all of us, and to tell Miriam, it was in January that Laura Hemmons and I talked about the top 30, the top 3 things, a project we've been working on for a year with the Oak Ridge Fund for Achieving Community Excellence. One of the very clear discriminators that all these people we've been talking to identified as something that they wanted Oak Ridge to be was to be a very open and exclusive, inclusive community. And I think this is one of those kinds of things that is included in that. And I just wanted you to know that I think it would be important to many people in town. So I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. All right, here's your microphone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Marian, that's my husband, Bill, has multiple disabilities. He has a traumatic brain injury he sustained in a bobsled crash about 30 years ago. And he has mobility issues and chronic kidney disease. How can somebody get more involved with what you're doing? Is it too late to get involved?
Not at all, not at all. And one thing I failed to mention was how can you all help if you're interested in helping? And right now, I think our thrust has been to try and work with city council and the city manager to get this board created.
Yeah.
And then once a board is created, people who want to be active can apply to be on the board, and there will be a lot to do. But putting my energy right now into trying to see that this board is created. And so speaking with people, I think if you speak with your friends, I don't know if Kelly's here today. We haven't been able to meet with Kelly Callison yet. Okay. If you know city council members and can support this effort, as I said, the limit right now is the idea that there are already too many advisory boards and commissions, but we've heard feedback from city council members such as Ellen and Jim Dotson, who are very supportive of this, that it's what they need to make good decisions. Thanks.
We don't think about, and this is so eye-opening to me, how many of you thought, well, the garbage can is too tall, I can't put my garbage in it. I mean, that's amazing to me that, well, we don't think about this because we go about our daily lives. I resent having to walk 200 yards up my driveway, put it on the front, I'm totally capable. But just putting the garbage in, just think about that. And all the other things that we don't even think about, don't know about. And boy, this is so necessary.
Yep.
Two more questions. You'll stay around for.
I will. I'd love to. I'd love to.
Marian, could you explain what it's like to try and get?
Yes, thank you. I didn't want to go into too much detail because I do want to add, Sheila Michaels asked if I could explain what it's like to get public transportation in Oak Ridge, and I will in very briefly in just a second, but I wanted to add that we started out focusing on transportation, and I've talked about that, but a disability advisory board would encompass so much more. It would be transportation, which is integral to employment. There is housing, there's social recreation opportunities. I'm missing some, but transportation is an important one. But it would be more than just a transportation board. So, but Oak Ridge Transit is actually a pretty neat resource because the city has supported it with 75% of the $200,000 a year comes from TDOT, and the city matches the other 25%. And right now you call up ETHRA, there's a phone number, you make a reservation. Now, if you're using Oak Ridge Transit within Oak Ridge, we have paid for enhanced service. So you can call one day in advance. You can reserve. The hours are Monday through Saturday, 8 to 5. And then they have a 30-minute window where they can, come pick you up early or to go somewhere or pick you up late. It's their window for scheduling in all the rides that they're doing. Outside of Oak Ridge, ETHRA is a 3-day advance notice and a 1-hour window. And they have been short drivers during COVID. They only offer service for medical appointments right now, but Oak Ridge Transit is open to anybody. And I have been using it more. I heard the horror stories at the beginning of 2-hour waits, 4-hour, problems. And I cobbled together friends and family and things to get where I needed to go. But Oak Ridge Transit is actually a very, very good resource in Oak Ridge. It could be better. We'd like to have Sunday. We'd like to have evenings to go to city council meetings and school events and all of that. Same day service used to have taxi coupons. That program went away. The My Ride program, hopefully some of you were involved in that from the senior center through a grant that was available to people 60 and over because of the court settlement money they were using. But that COVID came along right after it was getting up and running. So another kind of volunteer same day or 1 day notice ride program is another option.
Lucky, last question for now, and again, anybody wants to ask her some questions? No?
Okay. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you for being here. You need me to help you? You got it? Okay. Here we go. I'll come over. Oh, well, we'll do it this way. All right.
Explaining at the emergency room, tripping over my guys. This is not what I want to do.
Do not trip over that beautiful puppy. Kevin, you don't, I'm not going to tell the story, but if you want to ask Kevin how the fun he has in terms of getting his garbage to the garbage place. It's one of the little items, okay? But rather than go into that, you're trying to make Oak Ridge the place we all want it to be. That's pretty much plain and simple, right? Thank you for doing that.